What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team. All right, we are back in action. Rhomas Men's Team, pretty simple. We help each other make progress towards our goals. We've got Mr. Phil on board here. Phil, what's going on, brother?
Hey, what's up? How you doing?
Good, man. Dude, I and let me know if you want a different topic, but as you know, and maybe others don't, I work in wealth management, and a lot of my job has to do with the stock market, and the stock market's been volatile over the last couple of days. And one of the reasons I love economics and investing is because it's what I see is like psychology in numerical form. And to a certain extent, I would almost say it's more accurate than a lot of self-reporting, It's almost like I get a constant feed of the caloric intake, let's say, of somebody. So many people say, oh, yeah, I eat healthy. And it's like if I just have a ledger of how many calories they eat, that's going to be much more accurate than their self-reporting. So the stock market to me is kind of similar, just in economics. As they say, people vote with their feet and their money. And it's just so fascinating because you could see at a mass scale, no matter how many times you try to teach the public on, hey, things go up, things go down, you see these little bits and pieces of, I don't want to call it mass hysteria, but I think you know what I mean, like groupthink,
Yeah.
So I'm curious, because I'm so into the weeds with this stuff, like it's just my daily job. What is your perspective on that? And I can't really comment too deep into the weeds on returns and all that kind of stuff because of my licenses, but have you ever thought at a macro level about the stock market and what it means about human psychology?
I've thought about it. I don't know that I've ever had a thought that it means much, but yeah, no, I did notice something. I saw something about how like most tech stocks like Google and a lot of Apple and a lot of big tech stocks are all down like 10% or more. Yeah, for sure. I mean, people panic for sure. I just a random thing. I feel like people when the GameStop thing happened,
Yeah.
they like tried. I don't really know anything about it, so maybe I had this wrong, but I think they tried to shut off like people's ability to purchase GameStop or whatever because they were like thought it was like one of the arguments for when they shut off people's ability to buy GameStop was that they said people were most likely not buying the GameStop because they thought that GameStop was a valuable stock, but because they were essentially gambling. And there was this like argument that that's not what stock. Whoa, what's up, Troy? Yo,
Troy, what's up?
Hey, back in the States for a few weeks.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
Just chilling in the parents' basement, getting free housing, free food. It's been nice.
I love it. And in true form, completely shirtless, which I love. Troy, hell yeah. Let me put you on pause for real quick, Phil. Let's throw you back the mic. Phil was deep into philosophical about the stock.
I was just going off on a tangent, unfortunately. Just when GameStop happened, they said that like people were gambling, and I was like, that's what the stock market is to almost everybody. Almost everybody is they're gambling. People don't buy stocks because they're making Warren Buffett level analysis of companies. Like people buy stocks because the stock is going up, Like that's the way people function with stocks. So I thought it was very weird that they tried to like say like when I heard that some financial guy said like, oh, you're only legally supposed to buy a stock if you think that the stock is valuable. And I was like, I had never even thought of that. I thought everyone knew it was gambling. It's just gambling. Like, isn't that the way it works? But I don't know.
Well, it's funny, man, because as you could probably imagine, my point of view, because I work in it every day, is the opposite. And if you look at the capital, the majority of capital is long-term invested, right? If you're looking at like pension funds, 401ks, et cetera, et cetera, you and these larger institutions that just have enormous sums of capital. So, and they're investing into companies inside of the stock market. It's very fascinating because the stock market, if you look at its origin, is just really interesting. And I'll butcher this here, but basically, Alexander Hamilton, I believe, solved a financial problem that the U.S. had, which was like locally owned debt at the state level, and then he was one of the main contributors, if not the contributor, to the idea that okay, let's take the debt up to the federal level, and then okay, now we can actually own that debt countrywide, and people can buy bits and pieces of it. So they started trading those bits and pieces under, I think it was called a buttonwood tree in New York City, which is now the stock exchange. So it evolved over time, and then you could buy bits and pieces of companies, and they would come there every day, and I would say, hey, Phil, you want to buy my share of X, Y, and Z company, et cetera. So that's kind of the origin from my understanding. But now we've had the greatest gift and the greatest curse, which is quite literally you can buy ownership of the largest companies, like, and this is not an exaggeration, the largest companies in the history of the world. The problem is the greatest gift is you can do it like that. That's also the greatest curse. I mean, think about this is how crazy it is. You can buy ownership in Apple Computer in 20 seconds, but you can't buy the house next door to you, right, inside of a 4-month period. Like, so the lag time of transaction is enormous, which in my opinion gives people time to think, and they can almost understand the gravity of the situation, but it's hard to grasp the importance of something when it's just a red or green ticker symbol jumping up and down on your phone, and you feel like it's your way out. Do you know what I mean? It's just a lottery ticket. Oh, and whether or not this goes up or down tomorrow, I can sell it, immediately, essentially. So that creates for a certain percentage of the population to treat it exactly like you're saying, Phil, as this gambling mechanism. And in my view, that's just crazy, right? Like that is what can destroy wealth over time, So it's really fascinating to hear from people who are not like in it necessarily, because it's hard for me to almost detach myself from the professional point of view because I've been doing it for so long. But it is wild to me that people use it as a get rich quick tool. It's just absolutely fascinating to me.
Yeah. Been caller. I got cut off. Yo, Troy, you gonna jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to say that that's the reason why I'm very bad with understanding money. I'm a horrible saver. I've done the gambling thing with the stock market, and I kind of put it off as like, oh, you're just gambling, seeing what happens with fate. But seeing how Wes you're talking about it, it sounds like that's the reason why your field exists, because people have to put in that kind of like research and everything if they're going to make a sound long-term decision. Otherwise, it really is just gambling at that point if you don't know anything. So it makes me kind of understand the necessity for investment managers and stuff like that. I'm really bad with money, but it's starting to make a little bit more sense from you explaining this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it like this, it's everything in finance should be very rational, and if it's not, you're either being sold or somebody just doesn't understand enough to pass along the education. So if you look at a company, and I'm not promoting any companies here, let's pick your favorite big company, whatever brand you like. Well, they're selling goods and services literally every day. It's almost impossible to grasp the amount of transactions that are happening with, let's just say, like a Costco or something like that. If you've ever been to Costco and you see the woman or the guy counting with the clicker the number of people going in, right? That's like, think of how many people go in there per minute during, let's say, rush hour, and then how many of those people then buy dozens of goods during that leg of their trip, or during that trip, and then multiply that by the amount of people that day, and then by the month and the year, and that's just one location. Like that's like it's crazy to think about, and how much money. I mean, I don't know about you guys if you ever shopped at Costco, but there's not a time I've ever gone outside of Costco or left Costco without spending at least $400. You know, that's my personal experience. And then you multiply that times however many per day. And then if you look at where I live in California, there's about 5 Costco's literally within driving distance inside of a 25-minute period, literally. But if you look at China, from my understanding, I think there's 2 or 3 at this point because they just started opening them up. So it's like, okay. Again, I'm not promoting this company to buy, but as an example, I can get ownership in their expansion. And and by the way, the people who run these large public companies, as you could probably guess, they're freaking brilliant, right? Like like at the executive level, you're looking at Harvard, Yale, and they've been doing this for 4 decades, right? That's why these companies can expand. So if you can take a step back and say, okay, how can I actually buy ownership of assets that over the long run are producing value at its nucleus? Like if you ever want a good book, read Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations. It's like, oh, right, I don't want to take it would take me $10,000 worth of time to go and make that thing. I'd rather just go and buy that thing for $1,000. So I get $9,000 of value margin, right? And then you, Phil, if you're the one who's making the $1,000 thing, if it only takes you $100 to make it, right, then you get $900 of profit margin. And we can continue that in perpetuity. Where it gets, and that's very rational, right? So where it breaks down a little bit is if all of a sudden I want to try to buy your company and then I want to try to flip it the next day, right? And then that just aligns with human psychology, right? And although people won't say this, that is a get rich quick mentality, and we all know how that plays out. Phil, what's your perspective, brother?
Yeah, I don't really never know where the line is on this kind of stuff. Like even, I'm sure debt is very useful to people who know how to use it properly or whatever, but it is kind of weird that we allow people to buy stuff on debt,
Yeah, just so you know my perspective, I hate debt personally. Like as a general rule of thumb, I understand there's like sophisticated and intelligent ways of doing it, but I like what Charlie Munger said. He said, to be a successful man, stay away from the 3 L's: liquor, ladies, and leverage being debt. And ladies, he meant by like the distracting ladies, the bad ladies, the one that get you to cheat on your wife and all that stuff. And liquor speaks for itself. Completely agree with you though.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird that we allowed debt to be like, it's very, I don't know. So weird that we've gotten to a point where the whole college situation, obviously, in America is insane. And the fact that people buy cars, like I was talking to a coworker of mine who's like 20 years old, and his grandpa was going to buy him a 2018 car or whatever. And I was like, I mean, I guess if he's buying it for you, like, go for it. But I think someone your age should have a piece of crap car. And he didn't realize that he thought a 2018 was a piece of crap. And I was like, dude, come on.
Like, that's what I'm getting.
It's like a 15,000, like, just think of how, like, that's the thing is, like, without debt, it's like you can't even imagine buying that car, right? And it's like you shouldn't imagine buying that car. You should buy a $2,000 car. That's what you can afford, like.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal point, because I think it's piggybacking off of that phrase of there's no problem that you cannot make worse. And if you look at financially, right, like it's very similar. There's no financial problem you can't make worse with debt or with the next poor financial decision. I do think, unfortunately, debt plays this really weird role in society of it will allow that guy to go and purchase something that he can't purchase. But then in the status hierarchy competition game, it now puts false pressure on the guy who's competing for the girl with him. Does that make sense? Because he's driving around a 2018 BMW and he really can't afford it because he's borrowed future time and income, if that makes sense. But the guy who's intelligent, who buys the $2,000 car, to the girl that they're both going after, right? One seems like the obvious winner when in fact it's the exact opposite. So debt provides like this weird distortion in my opinion, in the male competitive hierarchy. Hey dudes, sorry for the interruption here. Just wanted to let you know, if you want to join our pro team, go to romasteam.com/pro. You can help support the channel. You will also get access to exclusive content, masterminds, one-on-one sessions, etc. All right, back to the episode.
So, on a macro level, I'm just asking questions about economics because I feel like you're more possibly able to answer these things. So, at like a macro level, so like when it comes to like countrywide things, is that a thing that you would say also applies, like your buying time to avoid like the big crash, and also looking like you're better and everything? Because like we know like the U.S. debt situation, and like in Japan, I think they have the highest debt of any country relative to their GDP. So it's like, it seems like countries like this, they have like a very lavish surface to them, but meanwhile economic problems are happening, like US inflation that's starting to hit Japan as well. Like, if you know anything about the exchange rate, currently Japan is working on monopoly money right now. Yet they still have like amazing tourism. People are infatuated with it. Yet other countries that are cheaper to go to, like Philippines, Thailand, they're starting to, from what I've been hearing, are actually better tourist destinations than it is to go to Japan. Yet Japan has this big image to like that they kind of hold together by keeping the surface level stuff afloat through like maybe buying it through debt. I don't know if that makes any sense. If you could shed some light on that, that would be awesome.
No, absolutely. So the funny thing is, if you can understand the macro if you take it down to the micro, oftentimes with finance. So imagine what you would do with debt at the individual level. Quite literally what you're doing, I mean, one way to think about it is you are borrowing future earnings and bringing it into today, right? It's like, oh, like I can't afford that car right now, but you know what? Like my job is solid. I'm for sure going to make this money. So what's the difference? I'll just take the next 60 pay periods and I'm going to pull it forward to today, right? And that sounds all good, except for the fact of two things. Number one, there's interest on those payments usually, right? And then number two, what if it doesn't go as planned? And then also it compartmentalizes it, puts it in a vacuum, because then you might do that with something else and something else and something else. And then all of a sudden you're optimizing for the debt payment. Oh, I can afford $500 a month. I can afford $700 a month, right? And then you're, as you could imagine, you're inches away from destruction. And then as we had in like 2008, a lot of people have what are called variable rate loans. So yes, they could afford the minimum payment on their debt structure, but then interest rates went up. And then boom, right? You're done. Or you have some sort of like weird debt structure of like balloon payment where, oh, like, if you ever seen the movie The Big Short, it really describes this, I think, in excellent detail, like an entertaining way. But it's the same thing that happens with humans. And then also we have, like at a credit card level, we have a complete misunderstanding. The human brain does not really comprehend exponential math that well. So it can't comprehend compounding positively that well. Like, oh, you know, if you get a 10% return on your investments year over year over year, that adds up to be a very large number given enough years. But it also works the other way, right? Negative compounding. So for instance, if you look at credit card debt, I mean, you're talking, I was just talking to somebody last week, their credit cards are at 19% interest. Well, it doesn't take too many years of compounding to destroy your wealth at 19% interest, but it's like a drug. So Phil, what's your take, brother?
Yeah, I think it should be illegal, probably. I mean, I don't really see why debt is legal to average citizens. I don't know. Seems like something you should have a license for, or something, or some kind of a understanding.
Dude,
of.
This is crazy. So Matt and I signed up for our first credit cards when we were in college together because they gave us a free T-shirt that said college. Like, that's a true story. You know what I mean? So they signed us. We were able, and we were like, then the next week we were able to sign up for another credit card because they gave us a free personal pizza. It wasn't even a full-size pizza. It was a personal, like, like a 7-inch pizza. And all of a sudden, boom, you have access to $15,000. Like that, like as an 18-year-old. That is insane. That's absolutely insane. I don't think that's legal anymore, by the way. But Phil, I think your point is a valid one. The human brain, it's very much like gambling. Like gambling should have a whole bunch of red tape around it, right? Because the human brain, it just gets overwhelmed by this in a positive way, and it's very hard for the average person to do these things responsibly.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I mean, this is why it's so frustrating that we paid off the student loan debt, because it seems like that just makes that just multiplies how this situation's already insane. Like the only reason they're giving students that much money, it seems like, is because you can't go bankrupt on student loans. And now we're also using the federal government to pay them off. So it's like, are we gonna keep doing this? Because this is like a literally like a suicidal plan. This is like an insane plan that makes no sense.
Yeah, which I appreciate you guys bearing with me in these conversations, because I do think it's really important for guys to know at least a baseline of what's going on. So if we dissect like the student loan, what I would consider to be like, crisis, what you have is the federal government basically going and saying, hey, everybody should get a college degree. That's essentially what they said. They said this, decades ago. And then as a result, they do what's called loosening up lending standards. So they put this pressure on financial institutions to say, hey, reduce your standards, so that an 18-year-old, right, can sign up for whatever, however many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, because we're going to make sure that they cannot file bankruptcy out of it, et cetera, et cetera. Well, because of that, what happened was you now have more people who are able to go to college, yes. But now because the lending standards are loosened and therefore expanded, well, guess what? That makes for a surplus of capital available for the colleges, which means that they can now increase their prices, which is kind of crazy, right? Is probably an unintended consequence, but that's why you have a lot of these colleges have been increasing their price by anywhere between 7 and 14% on an annual basis for decades. Like that's insane. So this is where I wish the government would be. I mean, honestly, I do wish we had more people in government who actually worked in real capitalism, so they could bring this knowledge to the table and or run their own businesses, so they could anticipate these unintended consequences ahead of time. But now you have, I mean, Phil, what do you think? And Troy, what do you think? I mean, how much does it cost now to go to a decent undergrad college?
So I graduated 5 years ago, and
Yeah,
I think it was 68,000 per year at a Big Ten school that I was at. And I was out of state, so it definitely got crazy. But I have a question about the reason why
70
prices went
grand
up.
a year.
Bro, yeah. When I was first in engineering, it was like 72,000, and then switched out of that, and it went down to a nice cheap 68,000
Per year?
So,
It's 68,000 per year?
I'm pretty sure it was 60. It was either 68,
Dude, like, man,
maybe
that's
56,
crazy.
maybe 56.
Yeah,
It was absolutely crazy.
I mean,
Um,
wow.
but
Yeah,
I just have a
it
question.
seems like there's like almost no jobs where that's worth it. There's like very few.
Nope,
I mean,
especially
there's some,
especially
but
when you do evolutionary anthropology and Japanese studies. Like you're not going to make the big bucks in those fields, bro. But just a question
wow.
about like why the prices went up when the colleges had more capital. That's a conscious choice for profits, correct? Just like that's a choice. Yeah. It's a thing that it could, like, this is like speaking as like, sounds like I'm trying to be like everyone should be even, but it's like I would think that if you have extra capital, it's like, oh, I don't need to charge extra prices. I could actually maybe even reduce it, invest more into the college, as opposed to just like, that sounds like a weird thing. It's hard for me to wrap my head around, like, we have more money, let me raise the prices more. I don't know. It
Well,
seems
Yeah,
the
like
thing is,
going
like,
backward.
I mean, we seem like we've gotten into this place. I mean, I don't know. This is a whole tangent, but like, it seems like we've gotten to a place with capitalism where it's like there's aspects of capitalism that are like very become very like almost divorced from the market, where they're becoming very anti-consumer. Like, I mean, just like social media right now is like literally, it's not. Social media has literally become not give the user the best experience, but give them whatever keeps them on the platform longest, which often is not a very great experience. And they do a bunch of stuff to like actively to fuck with you to make it so you stay on the platform longer. It's like so we've gotten to a place where literally like the customer is not the one using the product anymore. The customer is like this other thing.
Hmm. Yeah, and to your point, Troy, have you ever been to I don't know, a theater show, let's just say. If you have somebody who can't see, let's say they're in the third row. We actually had this for my grandmother. Last time we took her to a theater, my grandmother is like 4'0", so she can't see over the person in front of her. So then they give her a cushion. But then the problem is there's this cascading effect behind her, right? Because now you gave her a cushion, so now the person behind her can't see, and it continues and it continues and it continues. That's why they generally only reserve those cushions for children. Um, it's very similar if you think about like a college or any debt structure. Well, if Ray can now afford a larger house, right? Well, he now just bought the larger house, and I can no longer afford it, but because he had another $500,000 of debt that he took out, right? So the only way that I'll be able to compete with him on the purchase of that property is if I have access to a debt structure as well. Same thing for college. If you have a college that now takes the money, right, the increased supply of capital, and therefore they reinvest back into the college, and now they have a whole nother program for whatever you said, anthropology slash Japanese, whatever it is, right? Right. Well, now that's more of a niche thing they have available to you. So you're going to go there and you're not going to go to the school that doesn't have it. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, where are the adults in the room? So that they say, no, we're not doing this. Because if we start this, right, then you're going to have this negative cascading effect. It's going to be, you're not going to be able to stop it once it's out of the gates, if that makes sense. So, Troy, what's your take on that? And then we'll throw the ball over to Alex. Alex, if you're still there, brother.
It sounds like a misuse of what capitalism could be, because you talked about like when someone provides a product and it's like, yeah, you could spend $10,000 to make it, or you spend $100 to buy it from someone else, and then the value keeps like cascading in a positive way. It just sounds like the warped, like selfish method is what colleges did. That's what debt is. It's the opposite of making profits and making a product. You're going down the bad cascading effect. It seems to work, yeah, as like a mirrored process almost.
Yeah. Well, and here's the riddle. I mean, this is why it's hard, because it's easy for us to philosophize when we're not involved in it. But imagine you're selling your house, right? And you could either take 500,000 or you could take 1 million. To you, it's all the same cash, right? Now, the person who's bringing in the 1 million got a loan from the bank, but the probability of you not taking an extra 100% on top of the original offer is almost zero. And if you do it, then you're a hell of a guy. But the reality is, that most people are not going to take it, because the cash at the end of the day is just a higher cash value. Alex, what's your take, brother?
Basically, like all of this stuff just seems to be a failure to use capitalism. Like all of these college things increase prices because we guaranteed that they had a cash flow through socialist practices. Which I mean, I definitely think that there needs to be some sort of system that helps people who aren't able to get to college to go to college. But the way that we've implemented these things is we just created like there's no competition. If you're a bad school, you're getting just as much funding as a good school half the time, and like there's no reason to there's no reason to compete.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is there's not a lot of guidance. And I where I stand in the college debate is I actually think if like I look at my own personal career, college was extremely worth it. Like 100%. I would not have been able to even operate in my career if I didn't have the degree. However, I think for people taking more of these abstract, right, majors, etc., like that's totally okay. But the fact that, yeah, like Troy, I'm not digging on you. Like the fact that nobody's there to step in and say, hey, by the way, right, the employment prospects on the other side of this ledger are not, they're very likely for a long period of time not going to be justifiable to what you paid in here, right? Like the fact that Troy, for instance, had to pay the same amount for a major that relative to, let's say, somebody else, the earnings prospect might be 5 times higher, like quite literally, right? The fact that they're paying the same price is kind of crazy to me, or at least not coached up front. Because Troy, I don't know about you, but my mom had no idea about college. She couldn't coach me.
My family was just like, yeah, the goal is to get to college, get a degree. It wasn't like looking very far into the career aspects of engineering more so. Engineering offers a very useful skill. I was not in a good place during that time, and I couldn't keep up with the work. But even the counselors in college for both engineering and for my other degrees that I went for, it wasn't about like career opportunities when you're looking at like the potential majors. It was, what is the class load? How hard or easy is this degree going to be? It's like you're looking very short term. Meanwhile, college should be the thing that like prepares you and gives you the skills to be able to to grow your career over the next few decades. But they really just look in like a 4 to 6 year plan. And I really think there's a problem that, the lack of coaching, counselors are supposed to be that, but it's more just, how do you get through school? How do you get through this? How do we get you to fall for our financial scheme? We as in the college.
Well, because it like literally is a scheme. Because the thing is, like, if you try to finance a used car, you can only finance a used car generally that's less than 10 years old, right? Because if you finance a car and they repo it, they don't want to waste their time trying to sell a 15-year-old, 20-year-old car, you know? Mm-hmm. So usually if you finance a used car, it has to be relatively new and in relatively good condition. And that's because in that situation, the lender actually cares about you making your payments, you know, and they care about what's going to happen if you don't make your payments. But it doesn't really seem to be the case with student loans. It's just like not really a market, like Troy was saying.
Right. So, Ray, let's throw the mic over to you. Solve the student loan crisis for us, please. In between you're waiting to at bat at softball, which I think is where you're at. Let's do it.
Hey guys, I don't know how my audio or my mic is working, but really good conversation. Good. This is a problem as old as time. I don't expect our generation to fix it. I don't use any of the. I don't think if you look at it one way, I don't use any of the skills the skills I use today to make money. I don't think I learned any of them at college. Right, and I'm talking 3 degrees. I'm talking 8-9 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars of other people's money mostly. But is that a reason not to go to college? I don't know. You know, like I think part of the challenge is with loans and everything. College is available to everyone. Should it be available to everyone? I don't know. Like it would be an unpopular opinion to say college should only be for the rich or elites, but the problem is that I'm not sure that universal college education equals like universal job training and kind of like advancement, right? But on the other hand, I mostly enjoyed my college experience, getting hammered, not getting laid, sleeping in, missing classes. I wouldn't want to deny that of anybody. I guess, yeah, I guess the challenge is like, well, go in with eyes open. Don't expect to learn anything that's job relevant at college. I think that's what I would say. Because if I could do it all again, Wes, I'm not sure I would. I'm not sure I would skip college, like, because I think there are certain intangibles that come. There's like maybe a certain maturity that occurs. Now, maybe that maturity would have occurred in 4 years anyhow. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand. Like, there's no answer. It's like asking for a solution to homelessness or to Troy looking sexy. Or, right? There's no solution. He will always look sexy. There will always be homeless people. Right? And so, yeah. And actually, I'll push back. Like, we're so blessed. Like, why not send everyone to college? Like, don't tell them that it's gonna get them job ready. Just why not, like, we pay for the roads, we pay for bombs to fall in the Middle East. Why not let everyone go to college?
Yeah, so it's an interesting perspective, because what I wonder how much could be solved, right? Like, or at least mitigated, just through some back of the napkin math. Like we've talked about here, right? Result before return. Let's define the result that we're looking for. If we're looking for, Ray, to your point, of a rite of passage, an evolution from boyhood into manhood, to learn what it's like to, fold your own clothes and do your own laundry and all that kind of stuff for 4 years out on your own, I think that's great, right? And then therefore you can calibrate what you're willing to pay for that, right? Because if that's the result that we're looking for, like an experience that's going to give me more mature skills, then I could index down on the cost. Do I need to spend $70,000 a year for that? And then also on that same napkin, it's like, okay, if I choose this major, have an adult in the room that says, okay, just so you know, this cohort of major, right, here's what you're very likely to make on the back end of that, right, just so you know. And here's what those monthly payments will be if you're taking out debt. And if you're only making $36,000 a year, and 70% of your payments, right, are going to take up, or 70% of your pay is going to be taken up by loan payments, and you want to get a house and you want to do this, this, and this, you might want to reconsider. It's funny. I think like a 15-minute conversation would probably save families whatever percentage that they're spending on college. Now,
question, Wes.
Yeah.
I think it just occurred to me that, like, having a nice truck, having really nice sneakers, going to university, like, I think there's this kind of illusion of wealth or illusion of status, maybe. That's part of the conversation. Like, go to college, get your illusion of status, put it on your resume. It doesn't guarantee anything.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't guarantee anything. Go live in the most expensive zip code. It doesn't guarantee anything. Like, it does not, like, right? It's like get a nice suit. So how about you? It's just like getting a nice suit in the absence of learning about marketable skills or having a good attitude. Go get the nice suit, and then, like, don't brush your teeth and call everyone the N-word. Like, see if you can get through that job interview. You won't. So, like, I think that just there's college. There's no guarantees. It's just part of the kind of like status show and tell in our culture, and just know what it is going in.
So, Ray, let me ask you this, and then we'll throw the mic over to Alex and Troy and Phil. If you were to do it over again, would you do it differently?
Of course, I would. Well, I mean, yeah, of course I would. Like, I would get the BA, I'd get the 4-year degree, and then just do what I love, right? Whereas I kind of got it, like, so. But the thing is, we don't do it right the first time, Wes. Maybe, like, we don't do it right the first time. We have to learn the hard way, invariably. And I'm sure you've made, I'm sure you could come up with a handful of things yourself, right? Uh,
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think I would do it differently, but um, that's I don't want to get stuck in a bunch of head trash where I just start getting kind of like all the mistakes I made swirling around in my head. You know, would I do it differently? Yes. Are things all right? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms
Absolutely.
of
I can
advice for
understand
the
that.
next generation, like yeah, university or college is just one sliver of the pie of your
Right.
your maturity, your evolution, um, your kind of like the evolution of your like becoming like the magnificent man that you're supposed to be, right? Like the learning segment in the scorecard is but one of 10 things I try to do every day, right? And so that's another thing that comes to mind is that like sure go to college, but like that's just one of the 10 things um,
Yep.
that you need to do to guarantee that you'll have a shot, right?
Love it. Outstanding. Alex, let me throw you over the mic, bud, if you're still there. What is your perspective, if you don't mind sharing with the group? Like, did you go to college? If not, why? Like, what was the logic? Or if you did, would you reverse it, and or would you change it in any meaningful way?
Yeah. So I just graduated this year in May. I got my bachelor's in criminal justice. Uh, I was a non-traditional student. I didn't go to college until I was 24. I like grew up really poor, single mom. I was just told like I barely graduated high school, so I was just like, college isn't for you. Um, I got a job here in 2020, and they were paying for a good bit of my school, and then on top of that, I was getting FAFSA. So I actually, and with the pandemic payments, I actually made money to go to college for a little bit. Um,
That's
and then on
wild.
top
That's
of
a
that,
wild story.
yeah. And so like all of that together, uh, I graduated with no debt. I had my degree. I went to the local community college for my first 2 years and got my associates, and then I transferred that up to the state school. So the community college was super cheap. It was like 2 grand a semester or something, like really cheap. So for me, college seemed to be worth it. There was a little bit of like it was geared for younger people, so I didn't maybe take advantage of as many of the situations that were going on just because I was working full time, wasn't able to go do like the internships and stuff like that that other people did, which gave them a little bit of a leg up to get into a career with the major that they're in. But I work full time and I run a motel already, so like transitioning from that into the career wasn't as big of like impetus just because I already have something to keep me going. Um, so my opinion is like if you do it right and you get really really lucky and all the stars align, you can make it. Just like anything in America.
Well, hey man, I actually appreciate what you're saying because let's say, for instance, if you're a guy listening to this right now and you're in a career that you don't like, but you're like, oh, well, I can't go back to college because it's just so damn expensive. What you're highlighting, Alex, is that if you actually go through it in an intentional way, you can actually come out cash flow positive. Especially, Alex, you're not even counting that I think the fact that you worked during your college education. Right. So not only did you get COVID money, but it sounds like you were also working full time, at least during a portion of your college education. So you're coming out on
Yeah,
the other side of the fence, cash flow positive.
And Wes, did you notice he said he was a non-traditional student? Like he tried to
Mhm.
use that disclaimer at first, dude. It sounds to me like that's the right way to do it. That's something like, that's a good reminder. Go like
yeah. I got
who knows
scholarships
how
for
to
being a
set up their life at
non-traditional
age
student.
18?
Oh, sorry, Alex. What'd you say, buddy?
I got scholarships for being a non-traditional student. Like
Yeah.
I
Here's
think
here's the
there's like
crazy.
four.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Alex. I didn't mean to cut you off. Please continue.
I would just say it was like $4,000 a semester when I went up to the state school, which was pretty
Yeah.
significant for.
Yeah. And I also know a guy who went to school for, I think it was like economics. couldn't use his degree after he graduated. And then he wanted to learn computer programming. So he went to, I think, Udemy and Coursera, like those online schools, paid a few $1,000s. And now he works for a very large financial institution as right in their whatever, computer science or computer programming division. And just having conversations about this, about air quotes, alternative paths, and I agree with Ray, they shouldn't really be considered alternative. That should be the standard, and then justify whether or not you should pay 10 times the amount because of, for whatever X, Y, and Z reason. Troy, what's your take, bud? If you were to do it over again, would you do it differently?
Oh, I would do so many things differently. Oh God. But the first thing would be to actually put my nose to the grindstone and have dealt with an engineering degree, just to have a marketable skill. Whether or not I'm going to use it or not, it does prove that you do put in, even though it's like the short term doing the work, but that work is very intense and actually very applicable to so many fields. And yeah, I was very much just like, I like to go out, I like to party, make yourself depressed from partying too much, then you seclude yourself. I just really did college as like just dragging my ass to the finish line. And I really would have put in a lot more work and kept the people that were very motivational and doing good things, I would have kept them even closer. Like I have very, very successful friends from being in engineering, and if I kept those people closer, maybe it would have lit the fire under my ass to keep going and get through it, even though it would have been difficult. But I think it would have been a very good thing to have that marketable skill, as opposed to an evolutionary anthropology and Japanese degree. In terms of like what people could do for the future, like Alex, your path is like, that's really like a really good path to do. It's much better than the traditional routes. But I think I wouldn't say standard as much. Like there are other paths than what has been the traditional one that are very good. That one's an example. I also think, and I've heard this from people that came to the States to go to school. Get your undergrad outside of America and then do your grad school in America. It's much, much cheaper to go to school in, I don't know all the developed nations, but I think in quite a few of them, that's the case. Like, I think University of Tokyo, the best school in Japan, is like $2,000 per year or something before scholarships. Like, and you're going to the top school in the country. You get a degree there and then go to the States, where I think grad school is a little bit more focused. A PhD is more focused. That is something that it requires you to actually put in work, as opposed to just like dilly-dallying and having fun parties that you can do in your undergrad and still get the degree. Like, you really need to like start applying those things. So if you I think, yeah, going to school outside of a country and then coming back to the States to pursue even higher education, I think that's also a very good path that I've seen a lot of people do. Oh yeah, go ahead, Ray.
Hell yeah. Yeah, Ray, go for it, bud.
I just want to push back a little bit, Troy. Like, you're on an awesome journey, dude. And I don't know if you would be in Japan right now on your own, like growing tremendously, maturing. I don't know if you'd be there if you didn't do your undergrad in Japanese studies, right? And so there are, again, I want to push back on this binary that either university is mandatory or university is pointless, right? Because it's like, I think the problem is that it can have unknowable benefits, right? It's just a guaranteed job ain't one of them, because I too, Troy, yeah, so like I can say, oh, I wish I put my nose to the grindstone for the first 85% of my degree, because I didn't. But like, I want to just think about some intangible benefits to going to college. But like, is there relationship building that can occur that happens outside of, right? Like, so like, I mean, I want to make a case for going, but just knowing that like it ain't gonna get you a job, right? And so part of the roadmap might be um, to do it like Alex did, which is like just understand that you don't know shit at age 18, and you know a little by age 24, and so you're probably in a better position to make informed choices and the right choice at 24. I understand that, like, oh, if all your friends are going to college, and there's this weird kind of status pressure, right, to go. But yeah, I think that's what comes to mind for me is like rather than just like because Troy, I don't like I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be, dude. Like you're ripped. You're calling in from Japan. You're still in Japan, right?
I'm in America for 3 weeks actually.
Okay, dude. So
On vacation.
still, you're still on your like Ulysses journey, like your hero's quest, and like how that's going to set you up for when you're 30 or 40 or 50. I don't know. It's unknowable, you know. And so I guess that would be the one thing I would change. Is like I would take my sweet ass time. I would like if I wasn't gonna make more than 36 grand a year in my 20s and 30s anyhow. Like, should I go into 100, 200 grand worth of debt? No. Um, should I go like not knowing where I want to go to college? Should I just go to college anyway, and then not knowing what job should I just get a master's anyway? That's kind of an expensive. Like like flushing money down the toilet would actually be more fun and kind of like you can make more content that way, I guess. But yeah, like I want to push back against this binary that it stinks. Not that you guys are proposing that, but like they're like yeah, I would just don't do it as expensive, don't do it as quickly. Um, learning it comes in many forms, and it's something we're ideally going to do every day for the rest of our lives. So yeah, so again, I just don't have an answer. I'm just kind of like fleshing out different ideas. But to say that there would be no benefits, I think is like that's how I feel on my worst days. Like it was a total waste of time and money. But I think the career benefits are overstated and kind of like underdelivered. The career benefits are overpromised, underdelivered. The benefits are intangible, and so yeah, that's where I sit right now.
Outstanding, Phil. Let's throw the mic over to you, buddy. What is your take on all this? If you went to college, would you redo it? If you did not go to college as a result of this conversation, would you do it? What's your perspective?
I don't know. Just depends on the price, I guess. I mean, someone who's in his 50s right now, this programmer online, who's a very talented programmer, he went to Berkeley, and I think in the 80s at some point for computer science, and I think he said he spent less than 2,000 per semester in the 80s. So yeah, I mean that seems like that's like a direct result of administration, profits, and all that stuff getting out of control. I don't know what Berkeley is now, but I'm sure it's more than 10 or 20 times more than that these days. Mm-hmm. I didn't go to college. I dropped out of community college pretty quickly, and then just got lucky and got a decent job anyways. So I don't know. I think since my field is like computer science, it's pretty easy to do that stuff on your own.
Yep.
And yeah, no, I mostly just think it's crazy that the kids take out so much debt is just completely ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much to say.
Yeah. No. So piecing all of this together, here's what I would do. Literally taking from what all of you are saying. If I were to do it over again, number one, I would take a page out of Alex's playbook and I would go to community college for the first 2 years. I'd crush it there. I'd get internships during that, so I'd start to make money, and I would make sure my GPA is like spotless, like perfect. That would increase the probability that I get into a highly recognizable name brand institution, because when you apply, from my understanding, several years in, the likelihood of getting into these better universities is exponentially higher because not many people are doing that. right? And you had attrition, let's say from Berkeley, like the amount of people that apply to Berkeley and get in freshman year. First of all, the acceptance rate is like, I think it's like less than 10%. But then, as you can imagine, some of those people drop out by year 2 or 3. So if you're the guy now applying to fill in some of those spots, you have an increased probability of getting in, especially because nobody else is really applying percentage-wise. I would do that, and then the last 2 years, I would get the typical college experience, but I would have been building my resume and also increasing the probability of my scholarship scholarship prospects as well, like Alex was saying too, right? Like when you're a non-traditional student, you typically have increased chances of getting free money to go to school. That's what I would do, and then I would take what I saved in not spending the $70K a year up front. I would amortize that to buy other education along my career path to pick up the micro skills that college didn't teach me. So okay, now I got to learn sales. Now I have to learn marketing. So I would buy niche courses to get me there, and I would only buy those niche courses when that was the next chokehold on my career, if that makes sense. Okay, I make 80 grand now, and I could make 100 if I just learned X, Y, and Z skill. I'm going to go to Udemy or Coursera or whatever course provider to get that next little niche skill. So that way, like, right, I can get to that next 20K of surplus. Anyway, dudes, thank you so much. Troy, since you are our special guest from Japan visiting back to the United States, you have the final words of wisdom, buddy. Don't fuck it
up. There is not one path for higher education. You can figure out so many things through not even going to school. You can live, if you keep doing things intentionally, you will develop skills and knowledge that will serve you. And some of us on this call have been to college, some of us have not. We've all lived some incredible things, and don't fret too much, and don't go 70K in debt.
Love it.
I don't know.
All right, dude.
That was a lot of pressure, man. That was so much pressure.
No, that was all good.
I didn't know this was
Troy, it was phenomenal seeing you, brother. You're jacked as always. Phil, Alex, Ray, thank you guys. Love you guys. I got a jet. Later, dudes.